Hello, welcome to White Threads FlossTube number 109. Thank you so much for joining me today. In my last video, I told you about the embroidery that I did at the craft show, and I said that I wouldn't show it to you because I wasn't happy with it and I didn't like it. And I've thought about that over the last week and thought, well, why don't I go through and show you what I don't like about it? And let's make it a learning experience. So today I'm going to show you the embroidery that I did at the craft show, which is a tiny little monogram, and I'm going to go through what I didn't like about it and how I would fix that in future if I was to do it again. And I may do it again at some stage because I did enjoy making it, and yeah, just why not? But chances are I probably won't because, you know, I'm always doing other things. But anyway, if I was to do it again, I'm going to go through and I'll show you what I would change and how I would change it if I was going to do it again. So this is the piece that I was stitching at the craft show. I had it in a hoop, and this fabric is the Sotima 450 linen, which I've recently started selling, and I was working it in a cotton broder. I can't remember which one. I'll have to go and have a look to find out. So this is a monogram, and I was given this, which is a let me move that out of the way, a stencil by my sister some years ago. She was living in Germany at the time, and she'd found this, I'm assuming, in a local antique store, and the letters FP are what the monogram is of. It's made of a very thin copper, and one assumes that this would have been transferred onto fabric using a prick and pounce, well, not prick, but a pounce sort of method. So they would have got their dabbery thing and dabbed that on so that wherever the stencil has holes, it would have been transferred through to the fabric. Now, I don't have any pounce, so what I used instead was my Soline fabric pencil, and I placed it over this. I think I pinned it in place at the corner, and then traced, well, not traced, but went around in those holes. Now, because of the way, I'm going to put a piece of paper behind this so you can actually see it a bit better. Because of the way the stencil is structured, there's this bit here, because if you had, if the gap continued all the way along, it would actually become quite flimsy. And then there's here and here and here and here. So there's quite a few of those little gaps, and here there is one here and here. If you didn't have those, well, I'm saying gaps, but they're not, they're joins, so to hold the gaps together actually. If they weren't there, then the whole thing would just lift and be very, very flimsy and fall apart and become mangled, and it would be a nightmare to try and work with. So when I traced, I left those gaps there, and I stitched with them. I'm still calling them gaps, let's just go with that. And I stitched with those, but after a while I decided actually they probably shouldn't be there. That whole thing there, sorry, I don't know if you were able to see that. So I stitched with gaps here and here, but I decided after a while that I probably shouldn't be leaving them. I should be just stitching on as if they weren't there, because, well, that's, I feel, the way it would have been done. Now, I did say to you in the previous video that I wasn't going to show you this because it was pretty awful, and it is pretty awful. It's lumpy, and that's because I was stitching it in very low light, and I was being interrupted a lot by people who were coming to talk to me because I was at a craft show and I was exhibiting, and so therefore people coming and talking to me is the exact thing that you would expect them to do, and the thing that I want them to do, because otherwise I could just stay at home. But yeah, I decided that it should be free-flowing like that rather than having these gaps. So that was one of the things I wasn't happy with. And then there was the lumpiness, which if I'd been stitching at home I would have gone much slower, and I would have taken the time to not let those lumps be there. So yeah, I just did want to show you that those were the things that I was unhappy with, because that's a learning thing for all of us. If we can figure out what I'm unhappy with and how to fix it, then that's a great way to learn. So things like there's this curve here, which is not a nice curve. It's got a little bit of bump sitting out the side there, and I would prefer that that didn't have that little bump sitting out the side there. This is a very nice curve, but you can see along here that it's quite bumpy and lumpy down the side there, and I would rather that it was not. This side seems to be much smoother. So these are the sorts of things that I would want to fix. So underneath my tall stitching, so I've got the thin bits, which are like these bits here, and I've got the thicker bits, which are these bits here. And the thicker bits I've padded with a chain stitch, because that's what I'm used to doing with Mount Melick embroidery, and the thinner bits I've padded with split stitch. I'm not sure whether I would continue to use chain stitch. I think that's part of the reason why I've got my lumps and bumps, or some of them at least. And I'd probably just work more lines of split stitch. So where it gets wider, I'd work down one side, and then I'd come back and work another down the other side. And then if I needed to, I could put another row on top to give it the height. So I just wanted to show that to you. Rather than being just ashamed from it, let's use it as a learning experience. So there you are. This is a parcel that I received recently from a viewer who has been very kind to offer me some whitework from her family's collection. She had the approval of the family to send it to me, and she just wanted to check first, of course, and that's quite right, that I would be happy to receive it, which I was. So this came in the mail 2 days ago, and I haven't opened it yet because I wanted to do it with you guys. So I'm going to turn it over. Now, there were 2 pieces of whitework that were from within her family, and she's offered them to me. Oh, it's all wrapped nicely and everything. Okay, well, I won't necessarily read this in front of camera because it might be personal. Oh, I can't get this off. Right, I'll just open it and I'll read that later. It's for me, not for you. Okay. How lovely of her to send it like this. She didn't have to gift wrap it. Oh, wow. So these are what I assume would be pillow shams. No, they might not be. Depends on the size. I haven't seen the size yet. No, they're too small for pillow shams. They're just beautiful, beautiful. I suppose they're runners. So there's 2, and this is the other one, and they're the same as each other. So they're a matching set. Aren't they beautiful? And the fabric's so lovely. It feels like a cotton fabric as opposed to a linen. Yeah, I'd say that's cotton. It looks to have been done in a pearl cotton thread. So what we have here, we've got the little flower motif. It's got some eyelets sewn. Then there's some seeding stitch in the petals. There's padded satin stitch around the edge of the petals. Then we've got outline stitch for the stems. It's not stem stitch, it goes the other way. And then there's more satin stitch for the little leaves. And then there's some eyelets for the tendrils. They're beautiful. Oh, they're beautiful. So these are from June, and thank you, June. They're lovely. Really lovely. Around the outside there is an edge that's worked in a very fine buttonhole stitch. It's not closely worked. There's a little bit of gap in between just to show you that it doesn't need to be really close to hold the edge. And then around the outside of that there's a beautiful, I think it's bobbin lace edging sewn to it. And it's been worked particularly to fit the embroidery, the piece of fabric, because otherwise there would be gathers here, but this is actually worked to fit that exactly. Oh, they are beautiful. Now let's have a look at the back, not because I want to see what, if it's messy or not, but just to see how the stitches are done. So you can see that there's the seeding stitches worked. Are they French knots or what are they? Yep, they're French knots. Often seating stitches worked as 2 little back stitches, one on top of the other, and I can tell that it's not because behind each stitch there is not a stitch sitting there, which there would be if it was a double back stitch. Yeah, so it's beautifully, beautifully done. They're in excellent condition, and these, June offered them to me to add to my collection. Now that makes it sound like I've got a really big collection. I don't actually. My collection mostly consists of the things that I have made and things that people have given to me through family. So I've got some of my great aunt's stuff, and I've got some things that have been passed down through my husband's family. I have received just 1 or 2 pieces sent to me by people before who I've never met, and this is the case with June's beautiful pieces. So thank you, June. I am really grateful that you chose to entrust these to me. Thank you also for asking first, because that's a courteous thing to do. I don't necessarily want to accept everyone's work, but this is beautiful. Thank you. So now that I've shown you the beautiful pieces that June sent to me, I wanted to show you the whole thing because I'm not very good at getting these things on camera. So this is the whole thing, and you can see it's a beautiful piece. It's quite large, and they're both the same. So yeah, they're really beautiful, and I'm just so grateful to June for thinking of me and offering them to me. So thank you, June. Thank you for sharing a bit of your family history with me so that I can safeguard it for future. If you look at this and you think, oh, I've got some pieces that I could send Yvette, can I just request that you contact me before you do that? I don't have unlimited space for storing these sorts of things, and actually June sending me these prompted me to actually get myself organised and get some archival boxes to put my collection in, because at the moment they're just in drawers, and I think I'd like them to be somewhere a little bit more acid free and cared for than what they currently are. So if you think, I've got that piece, maybe Yvette would like it, please contact me first and ask me. I only have limited space, and while there's a chance that I may say yes, there's a chance also that I may say that doesn't really sit right within my collection development policy. I have a librarian husband, so you know, I know these sorts of terms. Yeah, it may be that what you're offering me doesn't really sit right with what I'd be looking to collect to safeguard for the future. It may be that I think it's absolutely gorgeous, and I would be astounded that you would offer me such a thing. And even if I decide that it's not right, it still may be gorgeous, but it may not just fit with what I'm wanting to collect. So yeah, if you are interested in sending me things, and look, there is absolutely no compulsion to even think to do that, because, you know, that would be a generous thing and not necessarily what you want to do. Even offering it to me, you might want to offer it to someone else that makes more sense to you. Anyway, I'm rambling. Please ask first. I may say yes, I may say no, and just because I say no doesn't mean it's not a beautiful piece of work. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this video, I would love it if you subscribed to the channel and hit the bell button, and what that will do is whenever there's a new video that comes up, you'll get an alert that'll tell you that there's a new one, so that you'll know to come and visit. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.